Betrayal never comes from an enemy. It comes from the one you trust the most. A perfect marriage, a devoted wife, a successful husband. From the outside, it seemed like a dream. But behind closed doors, secrets were festering, lies whispered in the dark, and greed insatiable, ruthless, was plotting its next move. He took everything from her, her trust, her love, even her wealth. But when taking wasn't enough, he devised the ultimate betrayal, one that would ensure she never stood in his way again. A fatal accident, a perfectly crafted crime. No witnesses, no mistakes. He thought it was the perfect plan. But fate has a way of unraveling even the most calculated schemes. What happens when the one you tried to destroy comes back stronger than ever? Sophia Lancaster sat in the back seat of her luxury car, scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly, when a notification flashed across her screen. $100,000, transaction at Tiffany & Co. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't made that purchase. A sharp frown formed between her brows as she tapped into her banking app. The transaction had been approved just minutes ago. Who the hell was using her card? Her breath hitched as unease slithered down her spine. Then the car lurched violently. Sophia's body slammed against the seat as the driver, Robert, yanked the wheel hard to the left. The tires screeched against the asphalt, the vehicle suddenly accelerating at an alarming speed. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted, gripping the armrest as the car swerved dangerously. No response. Robert's hands were tight on the wheel, his knuckles white. His face was unreadable. Panic clawed at Sophia's throat. This wasn't normal. She reached for her phone, her fingers shaking as she tried to call someone. Anyone. But before she could dial, the car jerked again, faster, wilder. Her stomach dropped. They were on a winding mountain road, one wrong turn and bang! The impact was instantaneous and brutal. The Mercedes slammed full force into a rock wall, metal crunching, glass shattering into a million shards. The sound was deafening. Sophia's body whipped forward, her seatbelt digging into her chest as the world spun. Pain exploded through her skull, and then darkness. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The wreckage was a mangled mess of steel and shattered glass. Smoke curled into the night air, flickering red and blue lights reflecting off the twisted metal. Sophia lay motionless in the back seat, her pulse faint, her breaths shallow. A paramedic leaned in, fingers pressing to her neck. "She's alive, but barely. Get her on the stretcher, now!" The chaos around her blurred as hands lifted her body. Voices shouted, radios crackled. Nearby, Robert groaned, struggling to move, his face covered in blood. His lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. A single word escaped his mouth. A name. No one heard it. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Was this an accident? Or was it murder in disguise? Does she possess a miraculous power that can bring her back to life? Stay tuned to uncover the truth in this gripping tale. Sophia Lancaster had always been defined by more than just her last name. Born into one of the most powerful hospitality empires in the country, she was the only daughter of the Lancaster family, the heirs to Lancaster Hotels and Resorts, a luxury hotel chain with properties spanning across continents. From the outside, she was the epitome of privilege, wealth, beauty, and a life paved with every opportunity imaginable. But those who truly knew her understood that Sophia was far from the stereotypical heiress. She was sharp, independent, and fiercely determined to carve her own path. Unlike many who were born into wealth and chose to bask in it, Sophia had spent years proving that she was more than just her father's daughter. She graduated with a degree in business administration, not because she had to, but because she wanted to understand the world of commerce beyond the walls of her family empire. While she could have easily taken a high-ranking position at the company, she insisted on starting at the ground level. Rather than relying on her last name, Sophia took charge of a single hotel under the Lancaster brand and built it into one of the most successful properties in the chain. Her strategic mind, coupled with her natural charisma, made her a force to be reckoned with in the corporate world. Even her father, a man known for his tough business acumen, often admitted that Sophia had the instincts of a true leader. Still, success came with its own price. The weight of expectations was relentless, and no matter how much she accomplished, the whispers never ceased. She's only where she is because of her father. If she wasn't a Lancaster, she wouldn't have made it. Sophia had heard it all, and maybe, deep down, that's why she was drawn to Eric Caldwell in the first place. Unlike the men in her world, sons of billionaires, heirs to old money, Eric had built himself from the ground up. He was charming, ambitious, and most importantly, self-made. He had started his career in finance, quickly climbing the ranks due to his sharp mind and silver tongue. He had an undeniable ability to persuade, influence, and win over people effortlessly. Sophia had admired that about him. He didn't rely on a family legacy or inherited wealth. He was hungry, determined, and relentless in his pursuit of success. It was refreshing. When they met at a business gala, the attraction was instant. Eric wasn't intimidated by her last name. He was fascinated by her. He listened when she spoke, challenged her ideas, and made her feel like she was more than just an heiress. With him, she had felt seen in a way she never had before. So when he proposed, she had said yes without hesitation. Their wedding had been the event of the year. Every major publication covered the union of the brilliant Lancaster heiress and the rising financial mogul. They were the power couple everyone envied, sophisticated, successful, and seemingly perfect. At social events, they were inseparable. Eric played the role of the devoted husband flawlessly, always standing beside her, whispering something witty in her ear just to make her smile. He was attentive, considerate, and supportive. To the world, they were the embodiment of a fairy tale marriage. And for a while, Sophia believed it too. But fairy tales don't last forever. The cracks in their perfect marriage were subtle at first. Eric, who once thrived on hard work and discipline, began changing. The hunger for success that had once driven him transformed into something darker, an insatiable thirst for status, wealth, and excess. It started with the lavish spending. New designer suits, a collection of luxury watches, a different sports car for every season. At first, Sophia dismissed it as the natural rewards of his hard work, but then it escalated. Exclusive parties, private jets, weekends in Monaco. Eric became obsessed with networking with the elite, surrounding himself with billionaires, real estate tycoons, and hedge fund magnates. He started playing golf at clubs that required a 7-figure buy-in just for membership. At first, she tried to be supportive. Networking was a crucial part of business after all, but something about it felt off. He stopped confiding in her the way he used to. There were late-night meetings that couldn't be explained, business trips that lasted longer than necessary, conversations that ended abruptly the moment she walked into the room. Then came the spending. Sophia began noticing large, unexplained charges on their joint credit card, high-end restaurants she had never dined at, designer boutiques she had never visited, a luxury spa retreat, booked for 2. When she confronted him, Eric always had an answer. "You know how this industry works, sweetheart. I have to entertain clients. It was supposed to be a surprise for you. Now you've ruined it." "Relax, Sophia, you're acting paranoid." But it wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. And her instincts had never been wrong before. Sophia had always been meticulous with finances. It wasn't about control or distrust. It was simply the way she operated. Managing a multi-million-dollar hotel chain required attention to detail, and that habit extended into her personal life. So when she logged into their shared account one morning and saw a 6-figure withdrawal that she hadn't authorized, something in her stomach twisted. $250,000 gone. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she scanned the transaction history. There were multiple unexplained expenses, each more alarming than the last. High-end jewelry stores, private spas, luxury boutique purchases, charges from 5-star restaurants and hotels she had never been to. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. She set her phone down, took a steadying breath, and turned to Eric as he walked into the room, adjusting his cufflinks like he didn't have a care in the world. "Eric," she said, keeping her voice neutral, "I was just looking at our account statements. There's $250,000 missing." The reaction was instant. His jaw tightened and his shoulders went rigid before he turned to face her. "Are you checking up on me now?" His tone was defensive, accusatory even. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not checking up on you. I'm asking about a large withdrawal that I don't remember discussing." Eric scoffed, shaking his head as he reached for his jacket. "I can't believe this. After everything, you don't even trust me?" That hit a nerve. Sophia had trusted him, blindly, fully, completely. But the way he was reacting now, like a cornered animal, only made her more suspicious. "I didn't say I don't trust you," she said carefully, watching his body language. "I'm just asking where the money went." Eric exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose like this conversation was beneath him. "It's for business," he snapped. "I need to entertain high-profile clients. You know how this works, Sophia. Not everything needs a damn approval from you." That should have reassured her. It didn't. There was something in his tone, not frustration but irritation, not justification but deflection. Sophia didn't argue. She let him storm out, but as soon as the door shut behind him, she picked up her phone. She had a very bad feeling, and she needed answers. Sophia knew better than to confront Eric without proof. So instead of pressing him further, she called someone she knew she could trust. Daniel Hawthorne, a forensic accountant and an old friend from college. "Daniel, I need you to look into something for me." Daniel was discreet, efficient, and very good at uncovering financial fraud. He didn't ask questions, just told her to send over the account details, and within days the results were far worse than she ever could have imagined. Eric wasn't just overspending, he was stealing. Daniel laid it out in brutal detail when they met in his office. "Sophia, your husband has been moving money, a lot of it, from the company accounts into personal ventures. And it's not just disappearing into thin air." He pulled up a file on his laptop and turned the screen toward her. "It's going to a woman named Brianna Delacroix." Sophia's stomach dropped. Daniel continued, clicking through a series of damning documents. Wire transfers, offshore accounts, property deeds. He bought her a penthouse under her name last year. Click. Paid off her car, Bentley Continental GT. Click. Jewelry, designer clothes, 5-star vacations, everything. Sophia barely registered the words. The betrayal felt like a blade in her ribs, twisting with every revelation. It wasn't just an affair. Eric had used *** their money, her money, to fund an entirely separate life with another woman. But it didn't end there. Daniel leaned forward. "It gets worse." He pulled up another document. A business registration. Brianna Delacroix was listed as the CEO of a shell company. Eric funneled company funds into this business, laundering the money through fake investments. Daniel's voice was grim. "This is fraud, Sophia, serious fraud. If the authorities find out, he won't just lose his career, he'll go to prison." Sophia's hands clenched into fists. Her husband wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly, pushing back the rage that threatened to consume her. She wanted to scream, to confront him, to tear down everything he had built on lies and stolen money, but she wouldn't. Not yet. Sophia Lancaster didn't act on impulse. She calculated. She waited. And when she finally struck back, it would be lethal. Eric Caldwell had always believed that power belonged to those willing to take it. In the beginning, marrying Sophia had been a strategic move, an entry ticket into a world he had once only admired from the sidelines. But now, she was becoming a liability. Sophia was no longer the trusting wife who let him do as he pleased. She had grown too watchful, too meticulous with finances, too involved in affairs that he had once manipulated with ease. He could feel her suspicion closing in like a noose. If he didn't act fast, he risked losing everything. So he made a decision. If Sophia was standing in the way of his fortune, then she had to go. A plan formed in his mind, cold and calculated. If she died, he wouldn't just be free, he'd be rich. With her out of the picture, her estate, her business shares, her entire fortune would be his. And as the grieving husband, no one would dare question him. He'd be pitied, supported, seen as a man who had suffered an unimaginable loss. No one would ever suspect it was murder. Eric's first move was rewriting Sophia's life insurance policy. She had one in place, but before he had only been listed as a secondary beneficiary. That had to change. Using his connections, he forged a request, transferring himself as the sole recipient of the policy. $10 million, enough to not just recover, but to thrive without her. The change went unnoticed. He made sure of it. Everything was falling into place. But an accident wouldn't just happen on its own. He needed a catalyst. and he found one in the form of Lucas Hartman, a desperate man drowning in debt. Lucas was a small-time crook with a history of fraud and reckless behavior. He had gambling debts he couldn't repay, and Eric knew a man with nothing to lose was the perfect pawn. Meeting in a dimly lit bar, Eric slid an envelope across the table. Inside was $50,000 in cash. "All you have to do," Eric said, leaning in, "is make sure the car goes off the road." Lucas hesitated. "And if I get caught?" Eric smirked. "You won't. You'll be injured, sure, but not enough to kill you. You tell the cops the brakes failed, the road was slick, and you did everything you could. No one questions a tragic accident." Lucas's fingers tightened around the envelope. After a long pause, he nodded. The deal was made. The plan was simple but deadly. Sophia was scheduled for a business trip and needed a driver to take her to the airport. Lucas would be behind the wheel. On the mountain pass, he would accelerate. At just the right moment, he would yank the wheel, sending the car veering off course, straight into the cliffside or over the edge into the ravine. She would die instantly. Lucas would survive, just battered enough to sell the story. The police would rule it an accident, and Eric would play the devastated widower clutching onto the millions he had just inherited. It was foolproof. He had covered every angle. There was no way this could go wrong. So, when the day came, Eric sat back waiting for the inevitable phone call from the police, the one that would tell him that his wife was dead, the one that would change his life forever. But that call never came. Instead, the phone rang, and when he answered, the voice on the other end made his blood run cold. "Sir, your wife. She's alive." And just like that, his perfect plan unraveled. Sophia had learned long ago that instincts were never to be ignored, and right now, every fiber of her being was screaming that something was off. Eric had insisted on arranging a personal driver for her upcoming business trip, a gesture that seemed considerate on the surface. But considering everything she had recently uncovered about him, Sophia knew better than to take anything at face value. She discreetly ran a background check on the driver Eric had hired. Lucas Hartman. The results were alarming. Lucas was not a professional driver. His record was littered with financial trouble, fraud charges, and gambling debts. The man was desperate for money, exactly the kind of person Eric would exploit. Sophia's blood ran cold. This was no coincidence. Eric wasn't just cheating and stealing from her, he was trying to kill her. Sophia knew she had little time to act. If she confronted Eric now, he would deny everything, cover his tracks, and possibly accelerate his plan. Instead, she decided to do something much riskier, turn the trap back on him. She arranged a private meeting with Lucas, choosing a neutral location where no one would suspect anything. The man arrived looking jittery, constantly glancing around as if expecting someone to arrest him. He had guilt written all over his face. Sophia wasted no time. "I know Eric hired you," she said, her tone even. "I know what he's paying you to do." Lucas stiffened, his eyes darting toward the exit. I don't know what you're talking about." Sophia leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "You're in a losing game, Lucas. If you go through with this, you're the one who will take the fall. Eric won't protect you. He'll throw you under the bus the moment something goes wrong." Lucas swallowed hard. "I was just supposed to—" He caught himself, but the slip had already confirmed everything she needed to know. Sophia placed an envelope on the table. Inside was $50,000, exactly what Eric had promised him. "Work with me," she said smoothly. "Do what Eric asked you to do, but on my terms." Lucas hesitated, his fingers twitching. "If Eric's plan succeeds, you'll end up in prison, but if you work with me, you walk away free, with your money." She met his eyes. "Tell me, which option sounds better?" Lucas hesitated for a long moment, his mind waging an internal war. Then finally he nodded. The trap was set. On the day of the trip, Lucas played his part perfectly. He drove as planned, following Eric's exact instructions, right up until the moment of the crash. Instead of speeding recklessly and ensuring Sophia's death, he executed a controlled crash. The car veered off the road, hitting the rock wall at just enough force to cause visible damage, but not enough to kill. Sophia had prepared too. Beforehand, she had hidden a packet of synthetic blood inside her coat. As the car impacted, She bit down on her lip hard, letting the coppery taste of real blood mix with the fake. She slumped over, motionless. Lucas followed the plan, stumbling out of the car, dazed but alive, playing the part of the surviving driver shaken by the tragedy. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived. The scene was exactly what Eric had wanted, except for one crucial difference. Sophia was not dead. The paramedics rushed to her side, checking her pulse. One of them, touching the fake blood soaking her coat, muttered, "She's in critical condition. Get her to the hospital now." Sophia let herself be lifted onto the stretcher, eyes shut, breath slow. She was playing dead, and Eric had just fallen into her trap. The news broke within the hour. Tragic accident. Billionaire's wife in critical condition after car crash. Eric, upon receiving the call, took a deep breath, hiding his smirk as he adopted a mask of grief. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. She didn't make it?" "Not yet," the officer replied. "She's in critical condition at St. James Hospital." Eric nearly dropped his phone. Not yet? That wasn't the answer he had expected. For a brief moment, panic seized him. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. But then he exhaled slowly, regaining composure. If she was in critical condition, it was only a matter of time. He just had to be patient. Eric ended the call and dialed Brianna. "She's in the hospital," he said, keeping his voice low. "I need you to prepare things for when the inevitable happens." Brianna laughed softly. Poor Sophia, such a tragedy. Eric smiled, imagining the inheritance, the money, the new life he was about to start. He had won, or so he thought. Because at that very moment in a dimly lit hospital room, Sophia Lancaster opened her eyes. She wasn't dead. She wasn't even dying. She was waiting. And soon Eric would realize his nightmare was just beginning. Eric played his part to perfection. In the days following Sophia's accident, he was the picture of a devastated husband, a man barely holding himself together under the weight of his grief. His appearances outside the hospital were carefully choreographed. Disheveled hair, dark circles under his eyes, a voice that trembled just enough as he spoke to reporters. "She was my world," he had said, voice breaking for added effect. I don't know how to go on without her." The public ate it up. His performance earned him waves of sympathy from friends, business partners, and the media. Investors reassured him that they would give him time to grieve, and his so-called friends sent flowers and condolences. It was almost too easy. Inside, Eric was celebrating. With Sophia gone, everything was finally his. He had already started the legal process to claim her assets. The insurance payout of $10 million, the joint accounts, the hotel shares. He didn't even need to try and cover his tracks. No one suspected a thing. All he had to do was wait. And while he waited, he had one more thing to do. Make Brianna the new Mrs. Caldwell. Eric never liked wasting time. With Sophia out of the way, there was no reason to delay the future he had always envisioned for himself. The life of a widower didn't suit him, but the life of a newly engaged man, rebuilding after tragedy, finding love again, that was the perfect narrative. He planned the engagement party of the year, a private, extravagant affair at a luxury resort, invitation only, attended by some of the wealthiest and most influential people in his circle. The VIP banquet hall was decked in golden candlelight, soft music drifting through the air as waiters moved through the crowd with glasses of vintage champagne. Brianna was glowing. She had dressed the part, a vision in a shimmering designer gown, her diamond earrings catching the light. She had always been beautiful, but tonight she radiated triumph. Eric had spared no expense for this moment. He moved through the crowd with an air of absolute confidence, accepting condolences from guests who had no idea he was about to propose to his mistress. They thought he was still grieving. That was the beauty of it. By the time the guests had indulged in enough wine and caviar to loosen their tongues, Eric decided it was time. He stood, clearing his throat, and lifted his champagne flute, drawing all eyes to him. A hush fell over the room. He smiled, playing the role of a man who had suffered and found hope again. "These past weeks have been the hardest of my life," he began, his voice heavy with false emotion. "Losing Sophia was something I never imagined I would have to endure." Somewhere in the crowd, a woman dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. A few murmured their sympathies. Eric exhaled slowly as if composing himself. Then he turned toward Brianna. "But through it all, there has been one person who never left my side," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "One person who reminded me that life still has meaning, that love still exists." Brianna gasped softly, pressing a manicured hand to her lips. Eric reached into his pocket, pulling out a velvet box. "Brianna," he said, dropping to one knee. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "You have been my light in the darkness," he continued, flipping open the box to reveal an enormous diamond ring. "And now, I want you to be my forever." The room erupted into applause. Brianna, her eyes glistening, nodded frantically. "Yes, yes, Eric." Laughter, cheers, clinking glasses. Eric slipped the ring onto her finger, standing to pull her into a dramatic kiss as the crowd roared its approval. He had done it. He had won. And then the lights went out. A collective gasp swept through the banquet hall. The room plunged into darkness, the only sounds being murmurs of confusion, the shuffle of movement, the clinking of glasses being set down. Then, just as suddenly, a massive screen at the front of the hall flickered to life. The white letters on the black background sent a chilling silence through the room. "Tonight is not Eric Caldwell's night of victory. Tonight is the night he is exposed." Eric's blood ran cold. Whispers surged through the crowd. Someone gasped, his hands clenched into fists. No, this wasn't happening. The screen changed, and then the audio began to play. A familiar voice. His own. Eric's voice, recorded in perfect clarity. "Just make sure she doesn't make it out alive. One quick turn, a brake failure. She won't have a chance. Once she's gone, the money is mine." A single horrifying sentence echoed louder than the rest. "It needs to look like an accident." The crowd erupted into gasps and horrified murmurs. Eric's entire body went rigid. His own words, his own voice, his own plan, broadcasted for everyone to hear. Brianna, who had been giggling with excitement just moments ago, paled. "What the hell is this?" Eric barked, spinning wildly, searching for the source of the recording. His heart hammered in his chest. Then, the doors to the banquet hall swung open, and in walked Sophia, alive, whole, and very much in control. The room erupted into chaos. A stunned silence fell over the room. The air felt thick, suffocating, as the large screen at the front of the banquet hall flickered again. And then, the voice of Eric Caldwell filled the space. "Just make sure she doesn't make it out alive." The words echoed, chilling and unmistakable. The audience collectively stiffened, their whispers turning into hushed gasps. "One quick turn, I brake failure. She won't have a chance." Someone dropped their champagne glass. It shattered against the marble floor, but no one flinched. "Once she's gone, the money is mine." A horrified murmur rippled through the room. Some guests turned toward Eric, their faces painted with shock and disbelief. Others took subtle steps away from him, as if his very presence was now toxic. Then came the next voice, the driver's. "Are you sure about this? If something goes wrong, I'll be the one they come after first." "Nothing will go wrong, just follow the plan. No one will suspect a thing." The audio cut off with a static click, leaving behind a silence so deafening it might as well have been a scream. Brianna looked like she was on the verge of passing out. Her hands trembled as she stared at Eric, her lips parted, but no words came out. Eric, meanwhile, was frozen like a man who had just heard his own death sentence. His face was drained of all color, his hands shaking as if someone had stripped the ground from beneath him. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke, and then the chaos erupted. Voices clashed, overlapping in confusion and horror. Is this real? Did he actually try to kill his wife? My God, I never thought... Eric suddenly lurched forward, his chair screeching against the floor as he whirled toward the tech booth. "Turn that off!" he bellowed, his voice raw with panic. This is fake. This is a setup." He lunged toward the screen, fumbling at his phone, probably trying to call someone, anyone who could fix this. But it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out. The next sound that cut through the chaos was the sharp, commanding voice of a police officer. "Eric Caldwell." The room fell into an eerie stillness. Eric spun around just in time to see the banquet hall doors fly open. Uniformed officers stormed inside, their badges gleaming under the grand chandelier lights. The air shifted, from scandal to something far more dangerous. At the front of the group, a high-ranking detective stepped forward, unfolding an arrest warrant with precise formality. "Eric Caldwell," the officer announced, his voice echoing through the stunned crowd. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, financial fraud, and insurance fraud." Eric stumbled back, his expression shifting from shock to pure terror. "No, no, no, no!" he sputtered, shaking his head violently. "This is a mistake. You don't understand. She's dead!" His hand flew toward the screen, his voice breaking. "She's dead! This is all a lie!" The officer stepped forward. "No," he said coolly. "It's justice." The click of handcuffs sent another wave of gasps through the crowd. Eric thrashed, trying to break free, but the officers tightened their grip. "Get your hands off me!" he roared, fighting like a caged animal. "I didn't do anything." "You planned your wife's murder," the officer stated simply. "And now, you're facing the consequences." Eric turned toward Brianna, his last hope. "Brianna, baby, tell them!" His voice cracked as he pleaded. "Tell them this is all a mistake. You know me." Brianna took a step back. Her face was ashen, her manicured hands trembling. You actually tried to kill her?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Eric saw the horror in her eyes. For the first time in his life, he realized he was truly alone. And then, a voice from the doorway, smooth, controlled, undeniably familiar. "Actually, Eric," the voice said, "I'm very much alive." The entire room turned, and standing there, poised, unshaken, and very much alive, was Sophia Lancaster. Time seemed to stop. Eric's entire body locked up. His eyes went wide, his breath caught in his throat, his lips parted, but no sound came out. Because this wasn't possible. Sophia was supposed to be dead. He had planned everything. He had made sure. His chest heaved. "No." The word was barely a whisper. His eyes flickered, desperate, searching. "No, you're dead." Sophia took one slow step forward. "No, Eric," she said smoothly. "You just failed." Her gaze bored into him, unyielding. "And tonight," she continued, "you finally pay the price." The room erupted into a frenzy. Gasps, whispers, disbelief. Eric broke. "No!" His face contorted in rage, his body lunging forward as if he could somehow undo what had just happened. "You were dead! You were dead!" The officers held him back, forcing him to his knees. Sophia tilted her head, watching him with the calm detachment of a predator that had just outplayed its prey. "You should have known better," she murmured. And then, for the first time that night, she smirked. It was over. For him, and only the beginning for her. The moment Sophia stepped into the banquet hall, Eric's world collapsed. For the first time in his life, he had no control. No lie, no manipulation, no charm could save him now. He barely had time to process what was happening before the police tightened their grip on his arms, the cold steel of the handcuffs biting into his wrists. "Eric Caldwell," the officer announced, his voice ringing with authority. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, financial fraud, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Eric snapped. "No, this is a setup. This is all a lie." His body thrashed against the officers as if sheer willpower could free him from the consequences of his actions. His face twisted in rage, his voice breaking in desperation. "Sophia is dead. She was supposed to be dead." He turned to the crowd, his eyes wild. "You're all being fooled. She's lying." No one believed him. The very people who had once shaken his hand, praised his success, now looked at him with disgust. "You tried to kill your own wife?" one man whispered in horror. "Unbelievable," someone else murmured. "You're finished," a former colleague muttered, shaking his head. The reporters in the room sprang into action, their cameras flashing like gunfire, capturing the downfall of the once respected Eric Caldwell in real time. Sophia stood there watching unshaken. Her expression was unreadable, but her presence alone sent a clear message. She had won. Brianna was the next to break. She had been frozen in shock, watching everything unravel, but now, as reality crashed over her, she stumbled backward. Her manicured fingers clutched at the edge of the table, her breathing ragged. I didn't know, she whispered, shaking her head as if that would erase the undeniable truth. I didn't know anything about this. Sophia turned, her gaze locking onto Brianna with the precision of a hunter watching its prey. You knew, she said simply. Brianna flinched. You took the money, Brianna, Sophia continued, her voice steady. You knew exactly where it came from. Brianna's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but there was none. The whispers began. People were piecing together the puzzle, remembering the extravagant vacations, the designer gifts, the lavish lifestyle. She lived off stolen money, someone scoffed. A gold digger through and through. Brianna's face burned with humiliation. But then, the final blow. Sophia lifted a document into the air. It was a business registration under Brianna's name. Eric used you, Sophia announced, making sure every single person in the room heard her. He put your name on his fake company, using it to launder the money he stole. You weren't just a mistress, Brianna, you were an accomplice. The color drained from Brianna's face. Reporters were already taking notes. The story of the year was unfolding right before their eyes. Brianna opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing she could say that would save her now. While Brianna crumbled, Eric's empire fell apart. His accounts frozen, his luxury penthouse seized, his business holdings stripped away, everything he had schemed, stolen, killed for, gone. Sophia had already ensured his financial ruin long before tonight, but now the public humiliation sealed his fate. Eric Caldwell was nothing. Sophia stepped forward, taking center stage as if she had been born for this moment. She let the silence stretch, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Then, she spoke. This was never his, she said, her voice calm but powerful. Not the money, not the success, not the life he pretended to build. It was mine. It was always mine. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Eric, the fraud, the criminal, the man who had tried to kill her, was nothing more than a thief who had finally been caught. Sophia's gaze flickered toward him one last time. You didn't just betray me, she said, her voice edged with cold finality. You betrayed everyone who ever trusted you, and tonight you're paying the price. The room erupted into applause, not just for the fall of Eric Caldwell, but for the rise of Sophia Lancaster. Eric sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, his wrists cuffed to the steel table in front of him. The air was thick with tension, the walls pressing in on him as the fluorescent light above flickered faintly. He had always been a man in control, of situations, of people, of outcomes. But now, for the first time, he was completely powerless. Detective Marshall sat across from him, flipping through a thick case file filled with evidence that left no room for denial. Let's go over this again, Marshall said, his voice calm but firm. You paid Lucas Hartman $50,000 to stage your wife's murder, didn't you? Eric clenched his jaw, his fingers curling into fists. I want my lawyer. You'll get your lawyer, Marshall replied smoothly. But first, let's take a look at what we've got. He pulled out a recorder, pressing play. Eric's own voice echoed through the small room. Just make sure she doesn't make it out alive. One quick turn. A brake failure. She won't have a chance. Eric's chest tightened. The walls felt like they were closing in on him. There's also this. Marshall tossed a stack of bank statements onto the table. Millions stolen from the company. Money funneled into fake accounts, lavish purchases under Brianna's name. You didn't just try to kill your wife, Eric. You bled her company dry. Eric's pulse pounded in his ears, and then came the final nail in his coffin. A second recording, Brianna's voice. You think we'll get away with it? Stop worrying. Sophia's out of the picture soon. Once the money clears, we're free. Eric's blood ran cold. Brianna had been in on it. She had helped him plan everything, and now she had thrown him under the bus. His breathing shallowed. There was no way out. While Eric faced his inevitable downfall, Brianna's life was imploding. The media ripped her apart the moment news broke. Scandal, betrayal, greed. The headlines were brutal. Gold digger turned accomplice, the fall of Brianna Delacroix. Social media erupted with mockery. Memes flooded the internet. #Brianna the Fool trended worldwide. She went from an envied socialite to a public disgrace overnight. Brands she had worked with severed all ties. Her sponsorship deals vanished. The luxury fashion houses that once gifted her designer dresses deleted her from their client lists. Panicked, Brianna desperately called every powerful connection she had. Nobody answered. She was radioactive. She tried reaching out to Eric. His number was disconnected. She tried begging friends for help. They ignored her. The same people who once flocked around her for her beauty, her charm, her access to wealth, vanished the moment she had nothing left to offer. And then it hit her. She was alone, utterly, devastatingly alone. Sophia, however, stood in the spotlight, not as a victim but as a woman reclaiming her power. She arrived at a grand press conference looking poised, composed, unshaken. She stepped up to the podium, cameras flashing, journalists leaning forward in anticipation. And then, with the confidence of a woman who had conquered the storm, she announced, "My marriage to Eric Caldwell is over." She pulled out the divorce papers, signed them right there in front of the world. "From this moment forward, he has no ties to me, no claim to my life, no hold over my future." A wave of applause swept through the crowd. Sophia continued, her voice unwavering. "I gave him my trust, my loyalty, my love, and he betrayed it all. But I will not let his actions define me. I am taking back everything he tried to steal, and I will never, ever allow a man like that to have power over me again." The statement was final. It was powerful. And most importantly, it was heard. Eric watched from his prison cell as the press conference played on the small, outdated TV mounted on the wall. His eyes burned with fury, his body rigid with disbelief. His wife, his golden ticket, his lifeline, had completely erased him. The guards laughed behind him. "Damn," one of them said, shaking his head. "Your ex-wife just ended you on national TV." Eric snapped. "Shut up," he roared, slamming his fists against the metal table. But it didn't matter. Nobody cared what Eric Caldwell had to say anymore. Outside, his name was being wiped from every financial document, every company record. The world had moved on without him. Eric Caldwell, once a man of power and wealth, now sat alone behind bars with nothing but regret. And for the first time, he understood what true rock bottom felt like. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final verdict. 20 years in federal prison. Eric barely heard the rest. His ears rang, his vision blurred. He staggered, his once proud posture crumbling under the crushing weight of his fate. Murder conspiracy, financial fraud, insurance fraud. The list of his crimes was long, but the sentence was simple. 2 decades behind bars. His once golden life was over. The press swarmed outside, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions he'd never answer. "Eric, any comments on your sentencing? Do you regret trying to kill your wife? How does it feel to lose everything?" Security shoved them back as the officers dragged him toward the waiting prison van. But Eric could still hear the mockery in their voices, the way they had already erased him from the world he once ruled. His name was now a stain. The newspapers printed his face under headlines like, "From Millionaire to Murderer, the Fall of Eric Caldwell." The man who lost it all. His accounts frozen. His properties seized. He had spent his life chasing wealth, power, and influence. Now he had nothing. But the worst part wasn't losing his money. It was watching everyone abandon him. The business associates who once toasted to his success now refused to acknowledge him. The friends who had flocked around him at lavish parties now acted like he had never existed. Even his own mother went on national television and said, "I have no son." Eric watched the interview from his prison cell, his hands trembling with rage. She had disowned him. The woman who had raised him, the one person who should have stood by him, had turned her back on him without hesitation. Eric had been the man everyone wanted to know, Now he was nothing but a disgrace. And then there was Brianna. At first she had pretended to stand by him. She had gone on talk shows, fake tears rolling down her cheeks as she played the victim. "I had no idea what Eric was planning," she had sobbed, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. "I was just as shocked as everyone else." She swore she was innocent. She begged the public for sympathy, but nobody believed her. The internet tore her apart. Photos of her lavishing in stolen wealth, sipping champagne on yachts, wearing diamonds paid for by blood money, they were everywhere. Memes flooded social media. #Brianna the Betrayer trended for days. Her modeling contracts, gone. Her sponsorships, canceled. Her socialite status, destroyed. Brianna was desperate. She needed an escape, and she found one in the arms of a new man. A wealthy older businessman who had more money than Eric ever did. Just weeks after Eric's arrest, she was already flaunting her new relationship. A new diamond ring on her finger, a new penthouse, a new life. When Eric saw the pictures from a prison newspaper, his rage exploded. "That lying whore!" He smashed his fists against the table, his voice echoing through the cold prison walls. She had left him, just like that, after everything. After all the money he had spent on her, the lies he had told for her, the risks he had taken. She had walked away like he was nothing. Eric screamed until his throat burned, until the guards dragged him back to his cell. And that's when it hit him. There was no one left. No allies, no money, no power, no escape. The day Eric was transferred to maximum security, the last piece of his dignity was stripped away. The once polished millionaire was now just another inmate in an orange jumpsuit. The other prisoners recognized him immediately. Some laughed in his face. Some threw their food at him. Some just watched, amused, waiting to see how the once great Eric Caldwell would survive in a place where money meant nothing. One man smirked, leaning back against the wall. "So, you tried to kill your wife for money?" he mused, shaking his head. "And now you're broke and locked up? Damn, you're dumber than I thought." The cafeteria erupted into laughter. Eric clenched his fists, humiliation burning in his veins. But no one cared. No one feared him. No one respected him. He was just another criminal now, just another disgraced man who had gambled with fate and lost. And as he sat alone in his cell that night, the realization finally settled into his bones. This was his life now. 20 years. 20 years of rotting in a cage, forgotten by the world. 20 years of being mocked, humiliated, powerless. Eric Caldwell had spent his life trying to climb to the top. And now, he had fallen to the very bottom. Sophia stood in the grand office of Lancaster Hotels and Resorts, the empire she had reclaimed. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the documents spread across her desk. Finalized contracts, expansion plans, and bank statements confirming that every single cent Eric had tried to steal was back where it belonged. The nightmare was over. Eric was rotting in prison, his name erased from her world, his legacy nothing more than a cautionary tale. Everything he had touched, every fraudulent deal, every stolen dollar, every scheme he thought was clever was now gone. She had burned it all down and built something even stronger in its place. With a satisfied breath, Sophia leaned back in her chair. She had won. The first thing she did after reclaiming her fortune was wipe out every trace of him. The penthouse he had once flaunted, sold. The luxury cars he had splurged on, auctioned off. The vacation homes, the designer suits, the jewelry he had bought with stolen money, all gone. And the proceeds? Donated. Every last dollar went to charities supporting domestic abuse survivors and women seeking financial independence. Because Sophia had learned something invaluable. True power wasn't in wealth. It was in freedom. And she was finally, undeniably free. Sophia didn't just reclaim her company, she made it better. Under her leadership, Lancaster Hotels and Resorts expanded internationally, launching eco-friendly luxury resorts and partnerships with philanthropic organizations. She became a powerhouse in the business world, proving once and for all that she had never needed a man to build her empire. And when reporters asked her about Eric, about her past, she gave them one simple response: "I don't live in the past, I build the future." The world took notice. Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, Time. They all ran features on her success. She wasn't just the woman Eric Caldwell had tried to destroy. She was the woman who rose from the ashes and built an empire. And now, women everywhere looked up to her. She received thousands of letters, emails, and messages from women thanking her for sharing her story, for proving that betrayal wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Sophia wasn't just a survivor. She was a symbol of strength. One evening, as the city lights shimmered beyond her office window, Sophia stood on the balcony of her latest luxury hotel opening. The skyline stretched before her, vast and endless. For the first time in years, she felt light. No regrets, no pain, no lingering shadows of the man who had once tried to define her. She had rewritten the ending, and this time it was entirely her own. Sophia had built a life on her own terms. She traveled, attended global business summits, and expanded her empire with the kind of fearless ambition that no longer sought validation from anyone else. For the first time in years, she was truly free. She explored the world, from the vineyards of Tuscany to the bustling streets of Tokyo. She took up hobbies she had never had time for before: photography, scuba diving, even learning how to fly a helicopter. She lived for herself. And yet on some nights when the world quieted down and she found herself alone in the penthouse suite of one of her hotels, she felt a void, one she hadn't acknowledged in years. Not loneliness, but something close. Not a need for another person, but a quiet yearning for something more, something real. It was at a global business and philanthropy summit in London that she met Ethan Carter. He wasn't like the men who usually surrounded her, those who whispered about investments, profits, and expansion strategies, all while secretly hoping to impress her with their net worth. Ethan was different. A CEO, yes, but not in the world of luxury or corporate takeovers. He ran a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping survivors of domestic abuse and financial fraud rebuild their lives, a cause that hit far too close to home for Sophia. When they were introduced, he didn't treat her like a business acquisition. He didn't comment on her wealth. He didn't ask about her past. Instead, he smiled, shook her hand, and said, "I admire what you've done, not just for yourself, but for the women who see you as proof that survival isn't enough, that they can thrive too." For the first time in a long time, Sophia felt something stir within her. Not attraction, not yet, but curiosity. They talked over dinner, not about business, not about profits, but about life, about the things that truly mattered. Ethan told her about the women his organization had helped, how many of them had been left with nothing, much like Sophia had once been, but had fought their way back to independence. Sophia told him about rebuilding herself from the ashes of betrayal. He listened, really listened. There was no arrogance, no entitlement, no hidden agenda, just genuine respect. And that was something Sophia had never truly experienced before. Not from Eric, not from any man, not like this. Ethan didn't try to impress her with extravagant gifts. He didn't try to claim her, didn't try to control her. He gave her space. He gave her choice. And that was how she knew. If she ever let herself love again, this was how it should feel. Not as a possession, not as a trophy, but as an equal, as someone who was free to choose. For the first time in her life, Sophia realized that maybe love wasn't the problem. Maybe it had only been the wrong man. And this time, if she was ever going to give love another chance, it would be on her terms. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final ruling. Eric Caldwell, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. A collective hush settled over the spectators, followed by the frantic clicks of reporters' cameras. The once powerful businessman, who had lived a life of excess and deception, stood in shackles, his face drained of the arrogance he once carried so effortlessly. There were no gasps of sympathy, no quiet sobs of support, because no one cared about Eric Caldwell anymore. His former colleagues had long abandoned him. The so-called friends who once toasted to his success now pretended they had never met him. Even his own family had cut ties, refusing to claim him. As the guards led him away, he didn't bother struggling, he didn't bother pleading, because he had lost everything. And now, all that was left was a lifetime of regret. Sophia, however, had only just begun. The day Eric was sentenced, she barely spared a thought for him, because she was too busy living. Her company had reached new heights, expanding into luxury markets across Europe and Asia. She had built one of the most successful hospitality brands in the world, proving to everyone, including herself, that she had never needed a man to define her success. She had always been more than Eric's wife, more than a victim, more than a survivor. She was unstoppable. But Sophia didn't just rebuild for herself. She made it her mission to empower other women. She funded shelters for women who had been victims of financial and emotional abuse, creating programs that taught them financial independence and self-sufficiency. She stood on global stages, sharing her journey from betrayal to triumph, reminding women everywhere that they held the power to rewrite their own stories. She wasn't just admired, she was revered. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was doing something that truly mattered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sophia sat on the balcony of one of her private resorts, a glass of wine in her hand, the salty breeze brushing against her skin. She had spent years chasing revenge, years rebuilding what had been broken. But now, as she watched the waves roll against the shore, she realized she felt peace. She was whole. The past no longer weighed her down. She had taken everything that tried to destroy her and turned it into something beautiful. And for the first time in her life, happiness wasn't something she was searching for. It was something she had created for herself. She heard footsteps approaching behind her. Ethan. He didn't ask to take her hand. He didn't try to complete her. Instead, he simply stood beside her, offering his presence without expectation. He turned to her and smiled. "Are you happy?" Sophia met his gaze, and for the first time in years, the answer came effortlessly. Yes. Because happiness wasn't found in wealth. It wasn't found in revenge, and it sure as hell wasn't found in a man. It was found in herself. And this time, it was hers to keep. Life has a way of breaking us, shattering everything we once believed in, stripping away the illusions we built around love, trust, and forever. It tests us in ways we never see coming, pushing us to the very edge of what we think we can endure. But in that wreckage, in the silence after the storm, something remarkable happens. We find out who we truly are. Pain is inevitable. Betrayal is cruel. Loss is a weight no one teaches us how to carry. But the human spirit is not so easily defeated. Strength is not born in comfort. It is forged in fire. It is in the moments when we are left with nothing that we realize we were always enough. Not because of the love we once received, nor because of the validation we once craved, but because of what we have always carried within us. There is power in letting go, not in forgetting, not in pretending the scars do not exist, but in choosing to rise anyway. In choosing to build, to heal, to move forward without looking back in regret. Some battles are not won with revenge or proving a point. They are won by living well, by refusing to let the past dictate the future. Happiness is never something we find in another person. It is not something given nor something taken away. It is something we create, a choice, a quiet, defiant decision to wake up each day and claim joy as our own, despite everything that has tried to steal it. And in the end, the greatest victory is not in seeing those who wronged us fall. It is in realizing we never needed them to rise. So to those who have walked through fire, to those who have felt the sting of betrayal, to those who have been told they are not enough, you are. Your story is still being written. Your strength is still unfolding. And perhaps, just perhaps, the best chapters are yet to come. Thank you for joining this journey. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories that inspire, empower, and remind us all of the unbreakable power within. Life has a way of breaking us, shattering everything we once believed in, stripping away the illusions we built around love, trust, and forever. It tests us in ways we never see coming, pushing us to the very edge of what we think we can endure. But in that wreckage, in the silence after the storm, something remarkable happens. We find out who we truly are. Pain is inevitable. Betrayal is cruel. Loss is a weight no one teaches us how to carry. But the human spirit is not so easily defeated. Strength is not born in comfort. It is forged in fire. It is in the moments when we are left with nothing that we realize we were always enough. Not because of the love we once received, nor because of the validation we once craved, but because of what we have always carried within us. There is power in letting go, not in forgetting, not in pretending the scars do not exist, but in choosing to rise anyway, in choosing to build, to heal, to move forward without looking back in regret. Some battles are not won with revenge or proving a point. They are won by living well, by refusing to let the past dictate the future. Happiness is never something we find in another person. It is not something given nor something taken away. It is something we create, a choice, a quiet, defiant decision to wake up each day and claim joy as our own, despite everything that has tried to steal it. And in the end, the greatest victory is not in seeing those who wronged us fall. It is in realizing we never needed them to rise. So to those who have walked through fire, to those who have felt the sting of betrayal, to those who have been told they are not enough, you are. Your story is still being written. Your strength is still unfolding. And perhaps, just perhaps, the best chapters are yet to come. Thank you for joining this journey. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories that inspire, empower, and remind us all of the unbreakable power within.